lunch, so while you guys are eating and gals are eating, I'll chit-chat a little bit about things that you can do in your private practices that can be really impactful. And this is dovetailing on some of the comments that both, all three that Glenn and Ramo and Doug commented on when you're trying to secure reimbursement. It's really helpful to have profound data. And the data experiences we've had in the Pacific Northwest have been fairly favorable. So I'm going to talk to you about collaborating. When I first spoke yesterday, I said collaboration begins with the person sitting next to you. And that's very true. Let's see if I'm going to be able to, which button do I push? Yeah, I may have to. That works. All right. So the essentials of collaboration are, like any success, start small. And like any sustainable success, promote somebody else's interests, not yours. Because if you're promoting only your interests, you're going to be having a team of one. And as soon as you lose interest, your whole process falls apart. If you support somebody else's interests and promote somebody else's interests, and there are 5 interested entities in healthcare, then you're going to be able to build a team to collaborate. So the 5 major groups, or the 5 Ps, are the patient, the physician, the payer, a purchaser, Microsoft, Amazon, Boeing, warehouser, product and device manufacturer, pharma. That fills out the list. The most important thing in collaboration is ownership of your data. And if you go to work in health systems, you will not have ownership of data. They have ownership of you, and they have ownership of your data. So it's and it's the only one that's highlighted. It's in all caps for a reason, as it's critically important. If you don't own your data, a lot of work will go, but you won't be able to control what's done with that work. So it's important. The other thing is to stay on a data diet. If you can ask 10 things, only ask 3. And find out if those 3 are really critically important. You'll find out quickly. If they are, you've guessed well, then add a 4th. But don't go for the whole pie. Just take one slice of the pie, one piece at a time. And transparent reporting is critical because it establishes a thing called trust. If someone can look all the way through your data and see all the way through it that it is sound, it's robust, and it's honest, you'll develop a reputation of being a trusted source for what works and what doesn't work. So those are the essentials. Then I'm going to show you some examples of collaboration. This is collaboration, but rather than looking at the title, this is an original article published in JAMA out of the spine surgery registry work that we did here. What I'd like you to do is look at the names of the individuals. Reading across the list, Sarah Kaur is one of the nation's premier patient-centered outcome researcher, as is Danielle. Both of them are research statisticians and researchers. The next 4 names are orthopedic surgeons. These 2 are neurosurgeons. That's anesthesia. That's general surgery. So all of these names are from all different places. And they have all different interests. They bring all different expertises. And that's what's great about collaboration. What you don't know, somebody else does. What you're really skilled at, other people aren't. So you bring the gifts you've been given to share, and you share it in the collaboration. That article and the 35,000 patients that article was based on developed a predictive analytic tool that you can plug in. And notice when you look at the entities, there are things that you recognize you have in your database. Age, sex, insurance type, whether they're smoking or not, whether they're using narcotics or not. Notice that these are all patient characteristics. Even though I showed you the names of those people, and they were in the top 2% of the surgical skill in the Pacific Northwest, the characteristics it predicted, you don't see the doctor's name on this. what you see is patient characteristics. Was it a virgin procedure? Or was it a revision procedure? And did the patient have significant pain or insignificant pain? And 5 out of 10 is nuisance pain. You might lose some sleep at night, but it's nuisance pain. And when you add these together, the tool will predict whether this patient has a likelihood of success. And for this patient, who is a revision surgery smoker on narcotics in the LNI system, the statistical probability of success is 13%. It doesn't matter whether you're doing a kyphoplasty or you're doing a DRG stem or you're doing a pseudarthrosis repair of a spine surgery, the patient characteristics are hugely impactful on what you do. And the way you find that out is by gathering your data and collaborating around your data. Take a look at the list of people in this paper. This is the world's largest vertebral compression fracture registry. So we have some orthopedic surgeons, we have experts in registry development and implementation, we have that incredibly skilled statistician, and we have interventional pain. So we have collaboration across subspecialties, and it produces a impactful paper that changes Medicare's authorization process for cement augmentation. Again, collaborating with people who have various skills and various interests. And what it produces is a paper that shows dramatic, and you've heard it said here, that one of the most impactful procedures that you can do, one of the best things you can do for patients, is treat a vertebral compression fracture the minute it walks through the door. And when the numeric rate, that's also a visual analog pain scale, 0 to 10, and 10 is horrific cancer pain, and 0 is no pain. Roland Morris dysfunction is in the low 20s for everything is wrong and the patient is bedridden, hospice. And at 3 to 5, you're out dancing on the cabaret tables after midnight. So those are dramatic improvements in pain and function that came out of that collaboration. And probably the most important thing, and this is what hit Medicare right between the eyes, is that we were able to show them that if you got this patient into the office the day she fractured, she has horrific pain, she has horrific dysfunction, and you completely changed her life, and it cost $6,400. If that patient comes in 6 months from the day of onset of the fracture, they're still in horrible pain. This problem does not spontaneously go away. You still snatch victory from the jaws of defeat, but you don't get as good of an outcome as you do when you do it the first day. And the payer tripled its cost. And I can show you a breakdown where those costs came from and how much of it was imaging, how much of it was readmitted to the ED, how much of it was skilled nursing facility, how much was opioids. All that is in those numbers. But this is the slide that changed Medicare behavior. And there's only one thing they looked at, and only one thing they saw. We are hemorrhaging money. And if we are putting authorization processes in front of the physician, the delays are occurring. And the money is hemorrhaging. And that's why this present day nonsense that we suffer with prior authorizations is a manifestation of this chaos, just in a different form. But it's the manifestation of this chaos. They happen to impose arbitrary costs in the form of physical therapy and other such things, but you're denied MRIs, you're denied procedures. It's the same foolishness. This is another example of, in your own field, collaboration, again, between orthopedic surgeons, interventional pain, and registry experts to bring this powerful data. And that's the thing to recognize in these 3 studies. It's hugely powerful data that came from collaborators participating in enrollment of their patients. And you share the same metric that you measure the disease by, and you share the same metric that you measure the treatment by, and your numbers very rapidly, within an 18-month period of time, you reach massive statistical probability and predictive or trending calculation capability. So it's a huge thing to do. Collaboration is a huge thing to do. There are other approaches to collaboration that are more conflicted. So there's a national letter that went around all of the surgical societies. Notice these are all surgical societies about who should and should not be doing fusion in the spine. The bottom line of it is there is only one truism that they stated in the four fundamental points that they were making. And that truism is, if you do develop complications of your procedure that requires operative intervention, you're handcuffed, because you cannot do that credentialing-wise. So it is really important to have a collaborative relationship as an interventionalist with a surgeon, so that if the cement leaks out and it does affect one of the intercostal nerves and horrible radicular pain occurs, the surgeon can go in there and grab that piece of cement and remove it. Happened to me, and I've done thousands of these, so it'll happen to you. And when that happens, if you have a good collaborative relationship, boom, problem solved. The rest of this is more NIMBY stuff that, not in my backyard. Only certain people have street cred, ortho-neurosurgeons. But the fact of the matter is, all you've seen this weekend is people with incredible knowledge, skill, and understanding of the spine talking to you. You've been drinking from a fire hose. So that is blatantly wrong. The second point is important. So in your practices, you must have a collaborative relationship with the surgeon. That's just good common sense. The rest of this is exclusionary criteria, and not inclusionary criteria. And that's not good. And as was commented earlier, by the time innovation goes a decade, this letter will disappear into the dustbin of history. But in the meanwhile, learn the important lesson that collaboration is critical to success. These are successful collaborations. The American Spine Registry grew out of that JAMA article, and that JAMA article grew out of Peter Fritzell's Swedish Spine Registry. Peter came over here in 2009 and taught us how to do that, and we just copied Peter. He said, you'll do things differently in America, because in Sweden, everybody does what they're told, and if you don't show up to your doctor's office, the sheriff puts you in jail, and you go straight to jail. It's not adjudicated. So Peter's ability to get complete data is a little different than us. But also, so the Vertebral Augmentation Registry, great example of collaboration that changed national policy. The Sacroplasty Registry, here people of diverse areas of expertise coming together to work together. In summary, the essentials that you got to hold on to if you're going to collaborate is you got to own your data, and you got to transparently report. You want to use what's called the Hawthorne effect, and that's basically shine a light in a crack house and all the cockroaches run to the corner. So if you shine a light on your data, you'll see, and everybody else's data, the light shines equally on everybody. You'll see what works and what doesn't work, and you can very rapidly change physician behavior using the Hawthorne effect. You do not need to punish anybody or exclude somebody from an insurance because of X, Y, or Z. No, you just shine a light. We're all type A. If you shine a light on my dirty underwear, I am going to do the laundry that night. And so if you have dirty data and mistakes are being made, and that's shown, you'll see people who do a better job, and you'll call them up and say, hey, how are you doing your spine fusion operation? Because I'm not getting your success. And they'll very gladly, any one of us, you call any one of us, and we'll very gladly tell you, well, this is how I do it, and I used to do it this way, but I found I made mistakes. And you learn. Quarter, half a year later, you're getting all those successes. So the collaboration is hugely beneficial. Registries is a very good way to do it. Registries work because you promote somebody else's interest. And what that does is that gives you a team member who is doing work on your behalf when you are asleep and you do not even know they're doing, and they're singing your praises in some other town when you're not even in that conversation, because promoting other people's interests builds trust, builds sustaining relationships. It's the way to go. And in medicine, having allies is more impactful than being an individual alone. That's it. Doug's up next. Any questions?